So thank you so much. Now it's time for Q&A. So everybody, if you have questions for a specific person, please preface that in the question. If you would raise your hand as well, you can send it out in the text box. If it's not directed towards anyone, I would love to hear everyone's insights across the board. So I'll leave it open to everyone now.
Hey, this is Emily. I was wondering, Leslie talked about how you came to MeetingPulse, but Jess and Wayne, I would be interested in how you thought about MeetingPulse and why you decided on MeetingPulse rather than Slido or one of our competitors.
Yeah, happy to take a run. So we did look at, we looked at Slido and I believe Poll Everywhere were the two main ones we looked at. And honestly, nothing really touched MeetingPulse. I mean, it was like I've harped on it so much, but the flexibility of it and how configurable it was, and then also the range of capabilities, that there's not just polling, but it also had the announcements and the materials, and we could use it for live chat. And it was just so applicable to so many things while also being, configurable and easy to customize. We were also working really fast, so we needed something with a light learning curve, and it nailed it.
I think, I agree with Jess on all those points. We hit the same ones. We also Pigeonhole and a couple others. For us, it was also that scalability piece. We knew we were going to have meetings that were going to be small up to quite large. And the other, the ease of integration was a big one. Would it fit into our development stack? And was it going to be a big learning curve for our development team? And then that ability to develop and integrate in via the API for us was absolutely critical, because we wanted to avoid having customers have to sign in to different applications repeatedly, or okay, you go into a platform and then you have to go sign into the communications tool, and you go sign into the polling tool and sign into this tool. We wanted to eliminate all of that and just have one streamlined process for our attendees.
Can I also maybe add something there? That I think there are basic, intermediate, and advanced users. And I think the good thing about the platform is if you haven't really used one of these before, it's pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that I'm always hassling for is, can I have toggles? Can I toggle on activity on and off? And I can see people smiling, because at an advanced level, there's a lot of hacks you can do, and we're not going into that now, but there's a lot of positive hacks you can do to achieve an outcome. But in order to do that, you need to toggle something on, toggle something off, and do something else. So I think we all probably use it in a very different way. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've been able to do to react in a way that the client has said, but can it not do this? And it's like, oh, it probably can, but we might need to call this something else, and we might need to toggle this on, and we might need to toggle that off. And if we put this link in here, and if we do that, yes, you can do it. And I think that's where the scores compared to other platforms, because most other platforms there's 10 things, 20 things you could do. The possibilities are almost unlimited here, but you don't want to get there if you don't know what you're doing. But I think that for advanced users who use it all the time, there's an awful lot of things you can do that really make a positive difference. And there's always a way, like with most technology, there's always a way you can achieve stuff.
Great. There's a question in the chat that says, have any of the presenters found that virtual event customers and attendees have come to expect the interaction as a given during sessions, or is it still positioned as a big value add? It's a great question. How have expectations changed?
Yeah, for our end, it's just an expected. Every session, if we didn't have a chat or a poll, not necessarily polling, but if we didn't have chat and Q&A or in Pulse, that wouldn't count as a session for most of our attendees.
I would have to agree. It's very much expected, especially, the basics, live chat. I do think we do still have the ability to add a lot of value with MeetingPulse, because it goes so far beyond just those basic tools and functionality. So we can still find a lot of opportunities to create value for our clients. But it's certainly expected to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think the thing I would add is it depends on the client, because I think there's you could say to a client, I really think you should have Q&A and chat, and say, don't really want Q&A because I don't want it unregulated. It's like, okay, we can regulate it, we can moderate it and things like that. And I think I've got some clients who say, well, can you switch chat off in case somebody says something? So I think there's a bit of an uphill battle, whether it's hybrid, virtual or physical events for some clients. And I think if you work with a client regularly as we do, it's a journey. So you might start by saying, well, you use Zoom, you let people have chat on Zoom. Yeah, well, let's just do that to begin with. Shall we ask them something? Well, let's keep it simple. Let's just ask them a few things. And by the time they get confidence in using the platform, I think that's when you can go kind of gangbusters in terms of using all sorts of different things. But we kind of start by not doing anything until we can convince the client that it's positive to do. And I think the last thing on this question is that a lot of people don't understand the possibilities. And if you're used to being in Zoom where there's 2 poll types and you've got chat, then people getting their head around what you can do with emojis or links or something else, you almost have to show them how it works rather than take it as expected.
I think, Leslie, your point there is great. With our customers, we do a not as a training session, but a show and tell with them of all of the functionality that we think would be applicable to their meeting type with their, not just the planner, but with their presenters. So that way the presenters, because otherwise they're like, well, what kind of questions can I ask? What kind of things can I do? But if you show it to them and say, okay, here's what the emojis mean, and here's which ones do you want? It really engages them pre-event, thinking about how they want to engage with their attendees.
That's great. I often say to a client, show me one you did before and show me the presentation flow, and I'll show you what you could have won, right? And then if you show me what you're planning to do this time, if money is an object and you really, you want to see everything that we can do to engage, I'll show you everything, but you're not going to want everything. And that's either as a demo or as against different activities. It's like the conversation about we want to network in the event. Oh, right. Oh, that's great. Define networking. Like, one-to-one, random, against a profile, free choice, no choice. And then all of a sudden your solution you're developing is different once you understand what they want.
Awesome. So we have another question in the chat relating to Zoom. And so the question relates to Zoom integration and if you use it versus separately in the QR codes. The question is, what are your experiences with MeetingPulse and Zoom?
I could start there. I've run 5 events today, 2 of which were on Zoom. And what we're often doing is thinking about, we're either doing what Jess and Wayne are doing, where we're building in the Zoom webinar equivalent in an iframe, or we're just saying somebody get a second device, second screen. So we sit on Zoom meetings and just keep blasting them in chat saying, poll coming now. Here's the link, click here. Oh, great questions coming in, click here. And so we're running a Zoom meeting as we are now. But what we're doing is we're telling the delegates up front that you need a second device. You need a second screen. We're going to make it really simple for you. And then keep watching chat, because every time we want you to do something, we'll put the link in there and you can just second screen it or do something else. So I think there are some limitations. And I was interested to see the Blue Jeans one that you mentioned, Wayne, and how that would work. But we are often saying, if it's a simple Zoom meeting like this, simplest thing is get a second device. Now, that might not be what everybody else does, but we try to keep it really simple for the audience in a Zoom meeting.
Right. We generally do Zoom webinars, and we'll use MeetingPulse for those as well. But within our platform, we typically would move people over to the interactive sessions within the browsers. So that way they stay in one place with the interactive session, which is basically Zoom embedded with the MeetingPulse to the right, keeps them on one screen, makes it easy.
We've done both of those approaches. The only thing I would really add is typically if we're doing it where we're advising that they get on their second device to use MeetingPulse, we will add a QR code to the web page. Yeah. So right next to like the video or whatever the call to action is, there'll be a little QR code that just says, scan right here to open the meeting on your device. So it's super, super easy for them to get to it.
Yeah. I often say to a client, if I've got an all-day meeting on Zoom and they've got it on a second device, if I have not got 95% of your delegates or participants on a second device, by the end of the day have failed. And it's my job to get them there, and don't worry about it. We will work out ways to get them on a second device, and that's telling them how to show and tell, linking them, showing screens or whatever. You can do it, but it's an effort. If you just leave it, show them one slide at the beginning, yeah, game over. You've got to keep banging on about it.
Right. And one of the things we didn't talk about is the second screen side for us as well, where we, in our hybrid type events, we use the same platform. It just doesn't have the streams. So if the attendee goes on the agenda, sees the event, they open it up, and within that screen, they would see all of the engagement tools, including MeetingPulse, our whiteboards, our interpretation, all of those other tools would still be there just on their mobile side.
There's a question specifically for Jess about raffles. Jess, are you using MeetingPulse for raffles?
Yeah, we have. We've used MeetingPulse for raffles. We learned, you could call it the hard way. We typically do the only using online attendees. We had a couple events where we would like do a raffle and someone had obviously kind of checked out, and so they weren't there when we announced them. So we always do online attendees only. We've also set it up so that you have to get the question right, and then that will lead into a raffle. So we've used both of those setups. Truth be told, we've also done one event where we actually had to do the raffle off of MeetingPulse because we wanted it to be by individual questions that you got right. Like you only had to get the last question right instead of having gotten all of them right. But we really enjoy the raffle, love the little graphic that pops up. And we've been trying to work the leaderboard in too. But yes, we have used MeetingPulse for the raffles, and I highly recommend doing the everyone who is online instead of everyone. Did that answer the question, Aaron? Was there anything else? Yeah.
Yeah. Next, we have Sophia, who's raising her hand, asking you to unmute. Sophia, go ahead.
Hello. So yeah, question for the group. So obviously, you know, we had to do this virtual pivot, but what about the pivot to hybrid? You know, looking ahead, what are some of the recommendations that you have for the engagement strategy? How can we still leverage MeetingPulse, and just looking for your overall thoughts on that?
Great question.
Yeah, happy to go first. I think for me, the element of hybrid is a bit like Emperor's New Clothes, because we've always done hybrid. It's always been around. And I think, you know, we're used to having 1,000 people in a conference room and 600 from home. And we've used the platform to engage in the room and have the link to people watching from home and sharing the results to screen. And the fact that people can see the results on their own devices or screens at home means that they feel included, and they can say, you know, question from outside or whatever. And I think the big challenge is, how do you define hybrid? Because we've run hybrid meetings where it's 3 speakers in a studio in Zurich in Switzerland, and the audience is fully virtual. But we're also talking about half the speakers in one location and 100 people in the room, and then everybody else virtual. And then it's just a math problem of how do you connect them, and how do you make sure that everybody sees the same things at the same time. So I think physical, virtual, or hybrid, an event is an event, and you know, and hybrid is just a form of an event where you would use the platform. In my view, but I guess Wayne and Jess, you might have a different view.
No, it's kind of the same. We try to find ways to make it so that it's the same experience. So for us, we use the same app, Zenevent, versus if you're local or physical. The only difference we do is we take out the stream if you're physical, because then you're in the room. But you still have all the same engagement tools of MeetingPulse, our foreign language interpretation, our stream text, all the things that you would need to engage in a room, you still have. So everybody's on the same page and sharing that same experience.
Yeah, same story. I think I'm most excited for the challenge of trying to convince event organizers that are trying to get all the way back into the live world to go hybrid with it and expand it to that broader audience, so people don't have to be there in person. I mean, I think we've learned so much over the past year about, you know, the capabilities and the tools that are available for opening things up and allowing them to be more accessible and virtual. So, piggybacking off of what Leslie and Wayne both said in terms of how, hybrid's going to go, but I'm excited to try to convince some people on Team Live to go hybrid and expand that offering.
So we have, thank you for those responses, guys. A question almost in the other direction. This is specific for Wayne from Jasmine. You mentioned how you used to work mainly with live events. How easy was the transition for you and your team from live to virtual events using MeetingPulse?
So 2 different answers. When we do the question and take out MeetingPulse, it was a challenge. When we do talk about bringing MeetingPulse in, MeetingPulse was easy. It was more of the transition overall from physical to virtual, because the MeetingPulse side was tool work that did exactly what we needed, but it was, our staff that was on-site producers and on-site technical directors now trying to have them switch to being virtual, and also working on educating our customers on, a little bit longer lead time for virtual, that they can't just change things. Some things now they can change easier, but that basically they can't all of a sudden just add and change and modify things that they thought they could just do at the last minute. It was a learning curve for all of us. So it was not an easy transition. It wasn't that we had issues or anything. It was just, there was a lot of work to transitioning people from the new role of being an on-site TD to being now a virtual production manager. That was I don't know, Jess and Leslie, if you experienced the same thing with your teams, but we certainly experienced that on our end.
I think for me, when COVID hit, we lost our whole year's worth of business ahead in about 4 weeks. And you sit there thinking, oh dear, right, well, what should I do now? And then you think, okay, events are still events are events, and their customers are still need to meet, the corporates still need to speak to people, still need to speak to their clients, still need to speak to their employees, but the medium of how they do it's changed. So I better learn about Zoom, and I better learn about these other platforms. But the process of engaging an audience and turn them into active participants is the same in any medium. So I kind of made the leap, which is, all right, I just need to learn some new terminology and blag about Zoom and pretend I know what I'm doing. And if you're 2 pages ahead in the book, then you're okay. And I think, the interesting thing is we more than doubled our team in the last 12 months, because all of a sudden one event generates another event. And if you're demonstrating the added value of using a platform that measures the outcomes and measures the value, and you can link to them before and you could do something afterwards, you're actually doing things that weren't always happening in the physical world. And I think it was like no idea what we're doing, but it's interesting just what you can do if you kind of follow the principles of keep your customers safe.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you for that. So we have a question from Sean Bell, very specific question, love it. Does anyone have some tips on ways in which MeetingPulse interactivity can be used as a better lead generation / qualification tool from a large group of mostly anonymous attendees during an event?
I'm building one at the moment for a webinar in a couple of weeks where people have got this new tech, a new AI for clinical research, and they've got an audience on and they're thinking, how do we get leads on the back of it? And what we are thinking about doing is using the forms at the end. And the thing is, you need to give people a reason to want to talk to you afterwards. And you need to give people a reason to want to hear a demo, get something, or do something. Just making it available isn't really going to work. So we're using the platform to think about, if you can, in the content delivery, say, here are the things that we think can add value to where you are. Then when you're asking people, how was the event? What are you thinking? Would you recommend this to a friend? Then here's the value that we can bring to you if you're willing to give us your email and willing to be contacted. So in a very simple way, we're kind of building in is, before you go, don't stop the meeting before you go to this form. And while you're on the form, let me tell you why I think you should put your email in and do it that way. But that's maybe not answering fully, but we use forms for that.
Anyone else like to jump in? I'm happy to provide some insights from a functional perspective. Again, it's Max, head of sales of MeetingPulse. So we see the conditional polling tied with the raffle is a really great way when we talk about functionality to run the event. So the conditional polling can allow you to take a really large audience who answers a series of polls and allow you to target them with specific responses. As they say, they like cheese versus grapes. You can create these threads of polls that follow up on that. So when it comes to creating specific forms that adapt to these different audiences that you're looking to ideally go after from a sales perspective, that's one thing. And then when we talk about incentivizing, getting people to answer those polls in the first place, that's when we talk about our raffle feature, gamifying it, getting people to stay on and answer them. So that's a kind of a review of the functionality I would talk about. Jess, Wayne, I don't know if you have any experience in the matter.
No, we don't use the functionality.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question. Let's see what we've got here. All right, so I see Dorian asked, does MeetingPulse have a way for a group of co-presenters to sort submitted questions to identify who will answer that group by topic, etc.? So a functional question. As we can see, there is a functionality in the ideas module. Emily, our head of customer support, noted that in the chat if someone wants to look at the specific response. But as kind of an action point, I'd say we have all three of these tremendous production companies here. If anyone would like to get in touch with them, I will be sending an email out to everyone who participated on this call. Join if you'd like to get in touch. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about MeetingPulse, our enterprise plan, any of other plans, reach out to us. We're happy to help, and we'll take it from there. So everybody, appreciate it. And you enjoy the rest of your days as we continue through this virtual event and ideally in-person event environment soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to add, the MP Experts program is a group of virtual event production companies and virtual event producers that use MeetingPulse. And if you use MeetingPulse, if you're thinking about it, we'd love to have you join. There's a partners page on meet.ps on our homepage, just link to partners, and you can see some of the companies that already participate. But we're glad to add you to it. There's no charge. And we love to have everyone participating in events like this where we share best practices and kind of raise the bar for virtual events in general. So thank you so much for coming today. If everyone wants to turn on their camera just for a moment and be brave and give a wave, we would love to see your faces just for a second. Thank you so much for coming today and making this event really special. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.